In this video, we start with an old pickup truck, $0 in our balance, and just a chainsaw. We have a small piece of land with a few trees and a little space for farming. Our goal is to turn this land into a fully functional farm. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and let's get started. When I spawned on the map, I immediately realized that we had no fields, no machinery, and not even a minimal starting capital. The only real way to earn our first money was to head to the nearest forest and start harvesting wood. So I didn't hesitate for long. I jumped into our old pickup and drove toward the forest. After reaching the right spot, I grabbed the chainsaw and cut down the first tree. Once the trunk was on the ground, I carefully removed all the branches so they wouldn't interfere with the next steps, then started cutting the log into sections. I needed to make several pieces that would be easy to load, so I tried to cut them evenly to place them in the bed without any problems. When the logs were ready, I drove the pickup a bit closer and began throwing the pieces of wood into the back one by one. The main problem was not to overload the truck. The pickup was already in poor condition, and too much weight could easily make it fall apart on the road. So I decided not to load too much and secured everything with straps so the cargo wouldn't fly out on the turns. Now it was time to head to the sawmill. Unfortunately, it was located quite far from our farm, but the price for wood was very good at the moment, so I decided not to waste any time and went there right away. All the way there, I was worried that the pickup might not survive the trip and that something could fall off. At the sawmill, I sold all the harvested wood, and we earned about $2,500 from this load. For a start, that was pretty good. With this money, I could already think about progress because my next goal was to buy a tractor. Without it, we simply wouldn't be able to do real farming and start building our own farm. On the way back, I decided to stop by the store and check the current prices. One tractor caught my eye, priced at around $7,500. It looked quite rusty and worn out, but judging by its stats, it should still work fine, and the price was very attractive. When I got home, I realized that the money we had was still not enough for a serious start. So I went back to the forest and continued cutting wood. I made several trips like this, always trying not to overload the pickup because it was our only vehicle and everything depended on it. After some time, we had a little over $7,500, enough to buy the tractor. But I decided to earn a bit more so I could also buy a plow. After another run, our balance was almost $11,000. That was definitely enough to purchase all the essential starting equipment. I immediately went to the shop and bought the tractor we had chosen earlier. In addition, for $850, I bought a small 5-furrow plow. I think that with it, we will be able to create our first field and take our very first real step toward building our own farm. After buying the plow, I attached it to our new tractor and immediately hired a worker to follow us to the place where we planned to create our first field. I then switched back to the old pickup because driving such a long distance on the tractor would have been far too slow. The trip took quite a while. The tractor's top speed was very low, so I constantly had to stop and wait for it to catch up. Sometimes I even worried that it might get stuck somewhere or go off the route, but fortunately it eventually made it to the destination. When the tractor finally arrived, I got behind the wheel and started creating our very first field. It was a truly important moment because this is where the road to building our own farm really begins. I tried very hard to keep the borders of the future field as straight and neat as possible, but it turned out to be more difficult than I had expected. The ground was quite dry, the machinery was bouncing slightly, and I didn't have GPS navigation, so I had to rely purely on my eyes. As I was plowing the first strips, I realized that growing crops in the future would bring far more profit than endlessly hauling wood. However, we were still very very far from that. We would need seeding equipment, harvesting machines, trailers, and many other things that we simply didn't have yet. We didn't even own a basic grain trailer, so for the near future we would still have to keep earning money by selling wood, just to be able to buy all the necessary equipment. After some time, I managed to fully outline the borders of our future field. It turned out to be quite large, and I understood that plowing it all by myself would take too long. So I hired a worker again and told him to finish the job, while I decided not to waste a single minute and went back to harvesting wood. When I got back to the pickup, we had almost $2,000 left on our balance. I immediately drove to the shop to spend that money wisely. There, I bought a log trailer that cost a little over $1,000. This was an extremely important purchase because now we could transport much more wood in a single trip than before, when everything had to be loaded into the pickup bed. The only thing that worried me was whether our old vehicle would be able to handle such a heavy load. Back in the forest, I cut down another tree and started loading the new trailer. Now the process went much faster because the trailer's capacity was significantly larger. While our worker continued plowing the field, I focused entirely on harvesting and selling wood, knowing that our farm's future depended on it. I kept working for a long time because I had set a clear goal for myself, to save enough money to buy another tractor. With a second machine, we would be able to significantly speed up the plowing process, and in the future, an extra tractor would definitely come in handy. My plan is to build a truly large farm, and in a business like that, you simply can't manage with only one piece of machinery. Gradually, our balance kept growing, trip after trip, load after load, and eventually I decided to stop when we had almost $21,000 in our account. I figured that this amount should be enough to buy another tractor as well as an additional plow. Since we now had enough money, I chose a tractor with a front loader mount right away. I knew it would be useful in the future, and the price wasn't high enough to skip this upgrade. Along with the tractor, I also bought another plow identical to the one we already had. For its price, it did its job perfectly, so I didn't bother looking for anything else. After the purchase, I immediately attached the plow to the new tractor, and then we all headed back to the sawmill in a small convoy. We needed to pick up our pickup. This time, I decided to put a worker behind the wheel of the old vehicle because I really wanted to drive the new tractor myself. That's how we made our way back to the farm. The tractor in front, followed by the pickup driven by the worker. When we arrived, I parked the pickup in its usual spot, got back into the new tractor, and started helping the worker plow the soil. To be honest, even with two tractors, this process still takes a lot of time, but now we're getting it done much faster than before. This once again proved that buying a second tractor was the right decision and an important step toward developing our future farm. After a long time, I finally finished plowing our first large field. The day was already coming to an end, and when the work was completely done, I realized that we had really accomplished a lot today. So I decided that it was enough for now and that it was time to get some rest. But before that, I wanted to take care of our machinery. Up to this point, all our equipment had been standing out in the open, and I really didn't like that. So I decided to build a small garage for it. Unfortunately, we only had enough money for the simplest and quite rusty option, but it was still better than leaving the tractor and the pickup under rain and sun. At least now we had some kind of shelter. I drove all the vehicles inside and was pleasantly surprised that even our pickup with the trailer fit in there. Only then did I finally go to rest. The next day, our main task was to seed the large field so the first crop could start growing. However, we had almost no money left to buy a seeder and seeds, so the only quick way to earn the necessary amount once again was harvesting wood. I headed back into the forest, trying to load the trailer with the biggest logs possible, and then drove straight to the sawmill. After arriving there and selling all the wood, we earned a full $5,000. That was a very good amount, and I realized it should now be enough for all the required purchases. I went back home to park the pickup because we would need a tractor to transport the new equipment. Then I got into our new tractor and decided to take the plow with me. We didn't really need two plows, and some extra cash would be very useful right now. At the shop, I sold the old plow, then bought a fairly large and inexpensive seeder along with several bags of seeds. After that, I attached the seeder to the tractor and manually filled it with seeds, then immediately headed back to the farm. When I arrived, I started sowing the field. Even though the seeder was much larger than our plow, the enormous size of the field meant that the job still took a very long time. I finished closer to the end of the day, but now the entire field was fully planted with canola, a crop that sells for a good price and doesn't require very expensive equipment to harvest. Once the work was done, I decided to rest again and wait for the canola to fully mature. During all that waiting time, I kept harvesting and selling wood, so by the moment our crop was nearing harvest, we had already managed to replenish our balance a bit. Finally, the moment had come. Our canola was fully grown and ready for harvest. I checked our balance and saw that we had almost $27,000 in our account. I think this amount should already be enough to buy all the equipment we'll need to keep developing the farm. However, we'll get to the shopping a bit later, because we've already come a long and difficult way, from an old pickup and a chainsaw to our own large field. Building our farm. You might remember that in the previous episode, our canola had finally grown. Right now, we have $26,000 on our balance, which means that today we can finally start harvesting it. Our field is very large, so I immediately realized that this process will be long and will require a lot of time and patience. That's why we won't waste any of it. I run to our tractor, jump behind the wheel, and head to the shop. In the last episode, we earned money specifically to buy harvesting equipment, and now it's time to see whether these funds will be enough to purchase a harvester as well as a trailer. I really hope that after all the purchases, we might even have some money left on our balance. When we arrived at the store, I immediately started looking for the cheapest options, because at this stage of the farm's development, we have to save money on literally everything. In the end, I found this tractor-mounted harvester. It isn't very expensive, so I decided to buy it, because right now what matters most to us is not how the equipment looks, but how practical it is. Besides that, I also bought a small trailer, and I was pleasantly surprised to see that we still had about $20,000 left on our balance. That's a really good result, especially considering that just recently we only had $26,000. Without wasting a single minute, I immediately started hooking up the new equipment and transporting it to our farm. First, I delivered the harvester and placed it next to the field, then unhooked it and went back for the trailer. All of this has to be done as quickly as possible, because due to the small hopper, we definitely need a trailer to unload the harvest right away and avoid wasting extra time. After arriving at the store, I hooked up the trailer and headed back. Because of the low speed, the trip takes a very long time, and unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about this problem right now. When I finally arrived at the farm, I immediately ran to our tractor to hook up the harvester and start collecting the canola. As you remember, the maximum header width of our harvester is only about 2 meters, so I can harvest just a few rows in a single pass. That's very little, and it will take us a really long time to harvest the entire field. Gradually, the harvester's hopper started to fill up, and when it was full, I ran to the second tractor to unload the harvested canola into the trailer. We managed to fill the trailer about halfway, after which I continued harvesting with the harvester again. So that I wouldn't have to drive the tractor myself every time, I decided to hire a worker who would follow us, allowing us to unload the collected canola into the trailer right away. Now we no longer have to waste extra time on constant trips to unload the harvest, which means we can harvest the canola much faster. I really hope that we'll be able to make decent money from this field, because right now we are seriously lacking good equipment. With such old and rusty machinery, we simply won't be able to develop properly any further. When the first trailer was completely filled, I headed to the selling point to immediately sell the harvested crop and find out how much income we would get from 2,500 liters of canola. If the amount turned out to be sufficient, I planned to buy another harvester to speed up the process, because at this pace, we simply wouldn't manage to harvest the entire field today. The crop is already fully ripe, and if we delay any longer, it may dry out, and then all our efforts and the money we spent will go to waste. When I arrived at the selling point, I immediately started unloading the collected canola. Because of such a small trailer, we managed to earn just over $4,000. This amount truly amazed me because we had harvested only a small part of the field, and the field itself is very large. That means that in the end, we will definitely be able to earn more than $80,000. After roughly estimating the total, I realized that we needed to harvest the entire crop as quickly as possible, so I immediately decided to go to the shop to buy another harvester. For $14,000, I found a small but fully functional combine harvester that already came with a header. This offer suited me perfectly, so I bought it right away. After that, I hired a worker to drive the tractor, while I took the wheel of the new harvester myself. Its speed turned out to be even lower, so the trip took even more time, but after a while we finally arrived at our field. I decided to hire workers for both harvesters while I would handle transporting all the collected crop with our trailer. This idea was supposed to significantly speed up the process. After some time, both harvesters got to work, and everything started going very smoothly. Now the main thing is to empty the harvester's hoppers in time so that they don't stand idle. While the harvester's hoppers were not yet completely full, I decided to build a small storage area. We simply didn't have the money for ready-made options right now, so I chose to just pour a small concrete and dump the harvested canola onto it until we finished collecting the entire field. After all, if we kept driving the tractor back and forth to the selling point, the harvesters would be standing idle for a long time, and that's definitely not what we need. So I kept driving around, collecting the canola and unloading it onto the prepared spot. After some time, the field was almost harvested. Only a small part remained. During this time, we managed to collect a huge pile of crops, and I was sure that we would make very good money from it. This meant that soon we would be able to continue developing our farm. I unloaded the last trailer onto the pile, and at last our canola was fully harvested. We spent a lot of time plowing the field and harvesting the crop, but I hope that all our efforts will pay off. After that, I parked the harvesters closer to our hangar and decided to check the weather for the next few days. And then it turned out that heavy rains were expected soon. At that moment, an unpleasant thought crossed my mind. All of our harvested crop was lying out in the open, which meant the rain would definitely soak it. That can't be allowed because if that happens, we won't be able to sell the canola and all our work will go to waste. So before it got dark, I ran to our tractor, hooked up the trailed harvester, and headed to the shop. When I arrived, I decided to sell it since we already had a proper combine harvester. After that, I bought a front loader for our tractor because it was time to start collecting the canola that we had dumped on the ground. I spent almost all our money on buying the loader and the bucket, then returned to the tractor and started attaching the new equipment. I really hoped that the tractor would be able to handle such weight and wouldn't tip over. When the bucket was installed, I lifted it slightly and headed back to the farm, because by the end of the day, we needed to transport the entire harvest. And believe me, there was a lot of it. When I arrived, I immediately started loading the canola. I noticed that the tractor was really struggling with a full bucket. It was tipping heavily, but we didn't have money for a counterweight right now, so I had to work as carefully as possible, loading our small trailer in small portions. So that I wouldn't have to keep reattaching the trailer every time, I decided to transport everything with the second tractor. I ran to it, hooked up the trailer, and went to the selling point. All of our remaining time went into transporting the canola, and of course I'll speed this process up for you in the video. When our balance reached almost $11,000, I decided to speed up transportation even more and went back to the shop. There I chose a trailer with a capacity of 16,000 liters and sold the old one. After hitching the new trailer, I drove back home, but unfortunately our old tractor struggled a lot with it. It turned out to be too heavy and too big. Arriving at the farm, I parked the old tractor in its place and started loading the new trailer. When all the canola was sold, our balance ended up being just over $110,000. To be honest, I didn't even expect us to earn such a huge amount, but there's definitely nothing to complain about. We will definitely invest this money into developing our farm so that it keeps getting better and our income can soon be counted in hundreds of thousands. As soon as I got back home, I decided to manage these funds wisely. According to the forecast, rain is expected tomorrow, and all our equipment is currently standing without any shelter. So the first thing I did was demolish our old hangar and build a new one in its place, one that can hold much more machinery. Besides that, I also decided to tear down our tent and replace it with a proper house where we will live. It seemed to me that one shed wouldn't be enough, so I built another barn as well. Our farm has changed noticeably, and now all that was left was to park all the equipment in its proper places. When all the machinery was finally in its places, I went to rest. Just as promised, it started raining the next day. The rain stopped closer to noon, and while it was gone, we needed to plant the new crop as quickly as possible because heavy rain was forecast again for the evening. So I immediately got into our pickup and headed to the shop to buy a cultivator and a new tractor. I decided to go straight for a powerful tractor. We had enough money at this point, and this kind of machinery will help us a lot. After heavy rains, the ground became very soft, and our small tractors unfortunately won't be able to pull heavy equipment anymore, not even the seeder. So a big tractor is the most profitable and correct purchase right now. At the shop, I found the perfect option for us. It was powerful enough and didn't cost that much, only $27,000. For that price, I definitely didn't mind buying it. I also bought a disc cultivator for $6,500 to work our field after harvesting. I put a worker in the pickup and I drove the tractor myself. Unfortunately, when I arrived at the field, I realized that I had transported the cultivator incorrectly, but there was nothing I could do, so we started cultivating right away. Since I had other plans, I put a worker behind the wheel. He will be able to process the entire field quickly. Meanwhile, I wanted to buy a device for processing wood with the remaining money, because we still have a long time to wait until the next harvest, and we need money right now. But we'll deal with that in the next episode. If you enjoyed this video and want to see the continuation, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and write in the comments what we should focus on next and how to develop our farm faster. See you soon, and goodbye everyone! When I woke up, our tractor was still cultivating the field. There was nothing to do there for now, so I decided to focus on forestry. I had to earn money somehow. We had enough funds on our balance, so I got into the tractor and headed to the shop. The goal was simple: to buy a wood chipper. With it, we can process logs into wood chips, which sell for a higher price. But its main advantage is its compact size. We can process a huge number of trees and load everything into one small trailer. Without it, we would have to make multiple trips back and forth, wasting a lot of time. With the new chipper, I returned to the farm. It wasn't cheap, but I'm sure it will pay for itself very quickly. As soon as I arrived, I decided not to waste any time and immediately headed to the nearest forest. There, I detached the chipper and drove back to the farm to get a trailer. Now, all that was left was to park the trailer next to the chipper and make sure to remove the cover. After that, we could get to work. All we had to do was cut down trees and manually load the logs into the chipper, where they were turned into wood chips. The process is quite long, so I won't bore you. Let's skip ahead to the moment when the trailer is full. I worked for several hours and eventually managed to finish. The trailer was completely filled. I got into the tractor and headed to the selling point. Because of the heavy load, the tractor slipped a bit, but it was just a minor obstacle on the road to success. I had high hopes for wood chips. It's a fast and reliable way to earn money and make a decent profit, especially with winter just around the corner when most types of work will become unavailable. Wood chips, however, are not affected by that. While we were talking, we arrived at the selling point, and I immediately started unloading. For one full trailer, we earned a whole $6,000. Quite good, especially considering that closer to winter, the price of wood chips will only go up. On the way back to the farm, I noticed it was already getting dark, so I decided to call it a day. I parked the trailer and used the money earned today to build another large shed. We had more equipment and there was simply nowhere left to store it. By that time, our worker had finished cultivating the field, so I decided to park the big tractor in the new shed. However, it didn't go without problems. The cultivator was too wide to fit through the gate, so it had to be left outside while the tractor itself was parked inside. After that, I went to rest. The next morning, heavy rain started. Working in the field in such weather was impossible, so I decided to return to forestry once again. I took the big tractor, hitched the trailer, and went to work. By the time I filled the trailer and delivered it to the selling point, the rain had stopped. I sold the accumulated wood chips and headed back to the farm. It was time to continue working in the field. When I arrived, I parked the tractor and went to check how things were going. It turned out that a large number of stones had appeared on the field, which would interfere with the work and could seriously reduce the future harvest. So I decided to get into our tractor and head to the shop to buy a stone picker. When I arrived, I found a cheap option, only $1,000. Yes, it isn't very wide, which means the stone collecting process will take noticeably longer, but for now, that's all we can afford. After the purchase, I hitched it to the tractor and headed back to the farm to get to work. Once there, I immediately turned on the stone picker and started clearing rocks from the field. After driving only a short distance, I realized it would take far too long, so I decided to hire a worker. While he was dealing with the stones, I decided to do a bit of work around the farm. First, in build mode, I placed a fence to protect our farm from unwanted guests. I also built a garage for our pickup truck for $5,000. In addition, I planted a few trees purely for decorative purposes. They wouldn't bring us any practical benefit, but the farm started to look much cozier. After that, I began organizing the machinery and placing it in different sheds. Of course, I didn't forget about the cultivator that had been standing outdoors until then. While the worker continued clearing stones from the field, I decided to focus on earning money again and went to sell wood chips. I was busy with that almost until evening. By that time, I had earned about $25,000 and also managed to fill another trailer, so I immediately took it to the selling point. I returned home only after the sun had set below the horizon. Our balance was around $30,000, which was quite decent. I parked all the machinery in its places and went to rest. All winter long I worked, earning money by selling wood chips, and by spring our balance had reached nearly $100,000. I had many plans for that day, and one of the main ones was to start our own sheep production. The sheep would provide us with wool, which we could sell. To do this, I removed part of the fence and bought a large sheep barn for $60,000. It could house more than 150 animals, which would be more than enough for our farm. After that, I decided to get into the tractor and go pick up the wood chipper, as I planned to sell it. It had fully paid for itself, and I wasn't planning to work with timber anytime soon. When I arrived at the shop, I first sold the chipper and then decided to buy a mower and a forage trailer. Our future sheep would need to be fed, and with this equipment, we would be able to mow and collect grass easily. Since we only had one tractor at the moment, I decided to take the mower first and drove it back to the farm. Once there, I hired a worker to start mowing the grass, while I ran to the barn and decided to buy sheep with the remaining money. To start with, I purchased 100 sheep, as I wasn't yet sure whether we would be able to feed them properly. They cost us only $19,000. Next, I ran to the second tractor, got into it, and headed to the shop for the forage trailer. After picking it up, I returned to the farm and began collecting the grass, immediately unloading it into the sheep feeders. When the feeders were completely full, I decided to go and rest, leaving the workers to finish the remaining tasks. When I woke up the next day, I saw that our worker had already completely cleared all the stones from the field and dumped them near the shed. By that time, he was also just finishing sowing our field. Meanwhile, our sheep had been working so actively that the wool storage was completely full. I immediately ran to the pickup truck to take the wool to be sold. I opened the garage, got into the truck, and headed to the barn. I manually loaded all the pallets of wool. Because of the weight, the pickup even sagged a bit, but fortunately, even though it doesn't look very powerful, it handled the job perfectly. In the end, I sold 3 pallets of wool and earned almost $10,500. Honestly, I was very surprised. The sheep produce wool quite quickly, and this level of income suits me perfectly. So I returned home and spent the next few months continuing to sell wool while working on our farm at the same time. By summer, our balance had grown to over $150,000. Another batch of wool was ready, and I immediately loaded it into the pickup and drove to the selling point. After a successful sale, I finally decided to upgrade our equipment. We now had more than enough money, so off to the shop we went. The first thing I decided to do was sell our old pickup. It had served us for a very long time, and I'm truly grateful to it for all its hard work. In its place, for about $90,000, I bought myself a new, powerful, and very beautiful pickup truck. Its main advantage is its high speed, and I absolutely love it. With the remaining money, I also decided to buy a truck, which would allow us to transport wool pallets much more conveniently. After that, I hired a worker, put him behind the wheel of the truck, and decided to take the new pickup for a ride myself. Just look at the interior. It looks absolutely amazing. I did slightly misjudge its power, and at high speed the truck skidded a bit, but thankfully, thanks to its excellent stability, everything ended without any consequences. And now we finally come to the conclusion. I'm happy with the result and believe that the time spent on this farm was definitely not wasted. We managed to achieve great success, create a huge field, and acquire our own animals. I think that's a good place to end things. If you enjoy videos like this, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so there will be even more of them. And now I'm off to enjoy my new pickup, so see you soon.